their idea of elk hunting is like you have to call in elk. That's what we're here to do. I've got a bugle tube, and what they don't realize is these elk, a lot of times they're tired of being called at. Mm-hmm. I think it sounds worse when you're trying to, like, if you're getting real close and you're like slowly snapping branches. It doesn't sound like an elk would walking through the woods.
All right, what is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, reporting from our quaint little pseudo studio.
It's a beautiful studio
at the Western Hunting Conservation Expo, joined by my very good friend, Mr. Brad Brooks from Argali. And today we're going to talk about something, Brad, that I know you are you enjoy doing, you're passionate about, and have some tactics that maybe they're not like outside the box, but you have some preferences or ways that you like to hunt elk, specifically archery elk.
Yes, sir.
And, man, that's what we're going to cover today. I think for a lot of folks, that quintessential out west animal, and there's a lot of them, but, man, a lot of people think of archery hunting elk, and there's no question that it is hard. It can be a multi-year endeavor to finally come home successful. But that's what we're going to shorten that curve here today, Brad.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. I think it's like the thing that especially like Western hunters and non-Western hunters love to do, which is hunting elk with a bow or a rifle. But as a guy who loves mule deer, they're just not as popular. There's something about just the species, whether it's the bugling, the size, the antlers, whatever it is. But everybody loves hunting elk or the idea of hunting elk.
Exactly. I mean, there's, and this is a common argument for a lot of folks, mule deer or elk. I always say both.
Both, absolutely. Both and.
Both and. But, I mean, they're tricky, I mean, most tags that folks draw, more of an opportunity style hunt where there's going to be other folks out there, high hunting pressure. If you're an out-of-stater like me, I kind of live in an elk state. Wisconsin has an elk herd. They do a lot.
I didn't know that.
I think it's about 5 tags a year.
Okay.
If I remember, if it's still kind of the same as it has been the last couple of years. But nonetheless, I don't plan on hunting Wisconsin. So for me, it's an out-of-state endeavor. You're not on your home turf. You don't get to scout it. Anything that, even myself, dude, I crush podcasts. Like if I have an upcoming elk hunt, dude, I'm on the podcast train, trying to blend what I know, my personal experiences, but also with folks that are getting the reps in every year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot easier. I mean, the advantage of living out west, right, is like you can do it on the weekends. You can day hunt elk, right? So you get a lot more practice than folks who have to come from like out of state, right? So, and it's I don't know. It's one of those hunts that it's approachable, but it's also like the success rate. I think for out-of-state hunters, I don't have the data, but there are some out-of-state hunters who are successful real regular. I run into one of the most fascinating things is just like there are many different ways to successfully hunt elk. I have met a number of Midwest hunters who like sit water holes and tree stands, which is an incredibly boring way for me to hunt elk, and I won't do it. But it can be an incredibly successful way to hunt elk. So I've seen like Midwest tactics brought to the elk woods in a way that works. But there are other ways too.
If you've grown up hunting whitetails, you have mastered the patience game.
Yes, you have.
And I think, looking at that too, number one, that can be incredibly successful, particularly maybe in certain regions or, certain areas. But also, we often talk about like mental toughness for like maybe like a high exertion hunt or like a mountain hunt, but there's definitely a mental toughness that comes with whitetail hunting and sitting and standing. And I don't want to imply that there's not a lot to whitetail hunting, because there certainly is. I know you've
absolutely.
done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've hunted them. I mean, killing particularly a mature whitetail buck is a very difficult endeavor. But I think one thing you learn, and maybe this is hunting in general, but you sit in the stand 7 days in a row or something like that. It's an absolute grind, and then it happens, and you're like, okay, it can happen. Like it can happen. So I can see that translating over to a person going, hey, I'm gonna hit the elk woods. I know there's elk sign here. I know there's elk in the area. Eventually, they're gonna get here.
Yeah, and they might go the people that I have met have done this. The first time I met somebody who was doing this, I think they were from Minnesota, and I was just like, so you've just been sitting in that tree stand for a week, and you haven't seen a bull over that wall you've been sitting? Like, no, but I've got a few more days, and they're just not disturbed by it at all. And I can't remember this particular gentleman's name, but he had a crazy high success rate for shooting elk using that tactic. And again, it's not the way I like to hunt, and so I don't do it, and I won't do it, but it can work. And it is, I don't do it because I would just be bored out of my mind. I would be thinking about all the other ways I could try and kill an elk. And that I'm like, I think my chances are better doing that. But if you have somebody who's like used to the patience game and is not bothered by the fact that they're going to go a week potentially without seeing something to shoot, like it can work. Yeah.
Well, and so much of hunting is confidence, right? And if you have confidence in like whatever, tactic you're using or the terrain that you like to hunt or whatever, wherever you found success, it's hard not to lean into that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you want to get in now to like the just like different ways in which you can hunt them, but yeah, the whitetail, bringing the whitetail tactics to the elk woods is something I never would have thought of if I had not met people who've done it. But yeah, it can work. Absolutely can work.
No, I think this dovetails into what we did or planned on talking about. How does Brad Brooks like to hunt elk? Because you're doing it every year. Pretty darn successful. Generally, at least once or twice a year, I get a text message from you. I'm like, oh, Brad got another one. So, like, how are you finding success?
It depends on where I'm hunting and the time. So it's like during the archer season, like the time of the month that I'm hunting elk, and also just like the pressure that are on those elk. So I hunt, public land like everybody else, and there are times where those spots can be, you never know what you're going to get in terms of like other hunting pressure, right? And that usually is the first threshold for me in dictating what I'm going to do, specifically with calling. As you and I were talking about earlier, I think there are a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of media out there where you see people calling in a bull. The bull is screaming like blah, blah, blah. They're blah, blah, right back at him, and they have this like interaction. And then next thing you know, here's a bull with antlers walking in. Somebody shoots it, dies, high fives all around. And that's the experience that everybody wants. And I've certainly done that plenty of times, but more often than not, that's not how I kill them. For a variety of reasons. One is like, early season before elk have like harems, like, yes, you can absolutely, that's a prime time. So like first half of the month, prime time for like calling in bulls. And it depends on whether or not you're trying to shoot big bull, like a herd bull, or a raghorn, like what you're tolerant, like what is it you want to kill? If you're just like, I'll kill anything that walks in, very different approach to me than saying like, I'm going to try and target large, mature animals. And then, and we can dive into this in the last half of the month if you're trying to shoot a mature bull, most of those bulls have, they have cows with them. And I know this is not like rocket science or like I'm not, new information necessarily, but I've seen so many people like this year. I saw it a lot, especially with folks coming in from out of state, and their idea of elk hunting is like, you have to call in elk. That's what we're here to do. I've got a bugle tube. And what they don't realize is these elk, a lot of times they're tired of being called at. And when you get within a certain range of a bull for a variety of reasons, whether it's hunting pressure, whether it's they don't want to fight with another bull, when they hear that bugle getting within a certain distance, they're going to turn and run. They're going to take their cows and they're going to get the hell out of town. And so I put the calls down for the most of the last half of the month. Like I will still use like locator bugles, but after I know a bull's in an area, more often than not, like I don't call at all. It's all spot and stock.
Really?
Yeah, because more likely than not, those bulls they don't want to fight, right? So you're chiming, like you're coming in aggressive. You can still get a bull to respond to you and come in and check you out and shoot it, just the way you watch in the movies, right? But myself And my friends who are like better at elk hunting than I am, who are absolute killers and are killing big bulls every year, most of them don't call at all. They don't even locate. They don't even use locator bugles. They won't call at all. Straight, silence.
So what does, in a scenario like you're describing, in general, what does the terrain look like? And then how are you finding these elk? Because you're not calling on them. They're not, responding back.
Yeah, they will. So let's talk about like last half of September. Okay. So elk are very vocal in the last half of September. So if you were, let's say you're hunting in the mountains, in the mountains in the West, and you get up in the morning, you're like, oh man, there's like elk piping off everywhere. And that one's, you might hear a bull that's just like bugling his brains out. You bugle at him from 500, 600, 700 yards away, and he fires right back at you. You might think, oh, that bull he's aggressive, he wants a fight, I can call that bull in, right? What he's really doing is telling you, like, stay the hell away from me. I'm down here, I've got cows, like, don't bother coming down here. So as you get closer, he'll keep responding to you, but as you get closer and closer and closer, when you get within a certain distance and you bugle aggressively at that bull, more likely than not, he's going to take his cows and get the hell away from you because he's not looking for a fight. He's trying to keep you from coming in by sounding aggressive, sounding big, sounding mean, sounding tough. But as soon as you break that barrier, whatever, it could be 100 yards, it could be 200 yards, but you're going to break a barrier at some point where he's going to be like, nah, I'm out. And that's what happens more often than not. It happens a lot, especially in high-pressure public land style hunting, which is why if I do bugle to locate, and I do that. So usually what I'll do is like get up in the morning if I'm trying to get to a spot where I can listen. The ideal scenario is you hear him calling, and I don't have to call. I just let them like use their noise, their bugling, to just sneak in on them. You can keep track of where they're at by just like keeping tabs on them. Don't call at all, and getting close on them. And go ahead.
I was gonna say, so when you're doing that, like, what's your pace like? Are you trying to cover ground as fast as you can to get in as tight as you can while he's still talking?
So yes, absolutely. So I'll try and so first thing to do is like try and figure out like what are the winds or thermals doing, right? So like if it's, having experience where you're at and knowing like what the winds or thermals are likely to do, assuming it's like a normal wind day. So if the elk is below me and the winds are going downhill like they usually do in the morning, I'm not going straight at that elk. You're going to have to make like an arc and come in either to the side of them or from below them, right? And that can take a lot of time. But usually, I'm just trying to cover as much distance as I can to try and get in on that elk from the right direction. And then what was your other part of your question, Mike?
Well, and then I guess the second part of that would be like, how worried about you are making noise as you're going in?
Not at all. I don't care. Don't even pay attention to it because I just sound like an elk. Especially during the rut, there's so much, activity happening, branches are breaking. Like if you're not calling, if I'm calling as I'm going, that bull, especially as I get closer, like he's paying attention to what I'm doing. If I'm just walking through the woods, breaking branches, like it doesn't matter to me. You just assume that elk, he doesn't know I'm a human. He's just going to think like, oh, there's some elk messing around over there. Could be a bull chasing a cow. Could be just an elk walking through the woods. Like they don't know what you are, and they're usually not that disturbed by like branches breaking. I think it sounds worse when you're trying to like, if you're getting real close and you're like slowly snapping branches, it doesn't sound like an elk would walking through the woods, if that makes sense. So like, just like there are sounds that elk make when they're walking through the woods. And if you're just making those sounds, like in terms of like breaking branches, like whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's kind of strange to think about, but like probably in some scenarios, it's actually better to be less careful.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, you don't have to worry about, I don't worry about it, I should say for myself. Like I don't worry about that noise because especially, again, during the rut, like it's real common to have elk. If you have multiple elk in an area, bulls chasing cows around, there might be a bull chasing cows that's not even making any noise, branches are breaking, whatever. Like elk are used to that kind of activity. Like they'll pay attention to the noise, but they're not going to run away from it. They might be alert, be like, oh, I hear some branches breaking over there. Their assumption isn't like immediate, like, oh no, branches are breaking, like I gotta get out of here. They're like, okay, there's something going on over there. Could be a predator, could be other animals. Like I'm paying attention to it, but I'm not that worried about it. So yeah, I don't worry about it that much.
And then, I mean, what if that bull gets quiet? Let's say it's kind of after that initial morning and, everything's settled down a little bit. in general, are you getting there in time, or like what's your next step there?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say like ideal scenario is like you get in on an elk while he's still fired up, and he's just talking, and you can get in position and either follow him to bed, like, and you usually I think a mistake I have seen people make. I have made this mistake plenty of times. Is a bull stops bugling and you're like, well, they're gone, and it's like 11 o'clock. It's like usually they're very close to where you last heard them. They have not left the area, especially if there's like water and feed around. Like they might wander a few hundred yards to a bedding area, but they're still there, even if they're not talking. So ideal scenario is like they're still talking, you get on them. If they stop talking, tough situation, right? So I might back up a ways, like several hundred yards, 300 yards even, and bugle from a safe distance where I know I'm not going to be a threat to where I last heard that, and see if I can get him to respond. And if he's in the same spot, I'm like, okay, he's still there. He's just like not. He's just like quieted down. So locator bugle. In that situation, like I won't bugle again. Sometimes I'll try a cow call or a series of cow calls because that's just not a threatening call to a bull. He may not respond, and in that situation, that's a tough one. Because if you're going in blind to where you think an elk is, or there's a bull with some cows, you have to just go into sneak mode and just be willing to go super quiet and make sure that you see them before they see you, which is a tough situation. What I would prefer to do in that situation is actually just wait, be patient. So just sit down, wait a few hours, and see if he pipes up again. That's the safe move, and probably the better move than just trying to like, well, I heard him there, let me just like sneak in there and see if I can find him. Like more often than not, if they're not talking and you're in some thick woods, like they're gonna see you or hear you before you, like when you get in that close distance, and they're gonna be out of there before you have a chance to do anything, like get a shot off. So patience is really like the name of the game at that point. And sometimes you just sit down and something like an hour goes by and he'll bugle once. Like they'll bugle, they'll oftentimes even elk that like aren't that fired up, they'll let off a bugle every once in a while.
Okay.
And this is like more late season, right? When you have like a bull that is on with cows. So like early season, when you have, let's say, bulls, there's a lot more like roaming around. Like bulls don't have herds yet. There's a lot of raghorns just walking around. They're bugling at each other. They're looking for cows. They're looking to build their harem, so to speak. That's a totally different behavior set than later in the month.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've gotten close, and you're within pretty good striking distance of a bull, and he does have cows. Like, how are you navigating the fact that there is a herd of elk there? There are multiple sets of eyes there. The bull might not be the closest one to you.
Yeah.
How's that work?
I just, again, like patience always, right? So I try and think about, especially if I expect, like, let's say it's late morning and I'm in close on a bull, you have to be prepared for the fact that your thermals are probably going to get squirrely for a while, and then they're going to switch direction. So you don't want to be you want to be off to the, like, let's say you want to be like parallel, maybe elevation wise. You don't want to be in a position where like a wind switch up or down is going to put you at risk. So in that situation, I would just probably back out a little ways, wait for the winds, the thermals to switch to a consistent cadence. So like uphill, and then I would try and like sneak in and position myself however I could to sort of sit on that herd. If I don't think I can get close, like sneak in and get close, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait till afternoon when they get up and they start getting active again. And I think I can make like another play on them, whether that's like trying to head them off and get in front of them as they move a certain direction, or just wait until they get to like, I can use the topography to my advantage to try and sneak in on them. So a good example of this, this year, my hunt, my late season, I call it my late season archery hunt, which is just last week and a half of September. I got into a spot that had been, just based on the boot traffic, had been hunted a lot. There were tracks everywhere. There weren't many people around when I was in there because everybody had like hunted it and gone home. And one evening, sitting up on a knob, and there's this bull rutting his cows out in this like burned area, and I'm watching him, And we've got about 2 hours before dark. Plenty of time. He's a ways away, but it's like plenty of time to make a play on him, right? But based on the wind direction going uphill, looking at topography, I was like, there just isn't a way I can get in on this elk. So I'm going to just sit and watch him. So I watched him till dark, and he was bugling, like just rutting, like having a great time out down there. And I was like, I'm going to come back tomorrow morning. I think he's going to be in the same drainage. Like I don't think he's going anywhere unless somebody pushes him out of here, or if you get some like wolves that come by and push him out of here. But like, I think he's going to be here tomorrow. And so came back the next morning, like he was 100 yards. I'm not saying this is always going to happen, but this is what happened in this typical scenario. 100 yards from where he was at with his herd. Winds were going downhill, which is more advantageous to the way we needed to sneak in with topography. And I was able to get in, sneak in on him. I never bugled at him once. Just waited.
Was he by himself then?
No, he was with maybe a dozen cows.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of eyeballs, and it was wide open. So it was not it was wide open, but there was a little cut, and I waited. They were up on there was 2 ridges and a cut that went down about maybe 80 yards in elevation to the bottom of it, and there was a spring down there. And so I just waited until the cows all kind of, they were going down to get water in this little cut. And I waited till they were down in the depression, and then we just ran about a mile at them down a mountain. And then I just positioned myself on top of this knob, and it was a warm day, and there was some green timber above me. And I just making judgment calls in the moment. But I'm like, I think they're going to go up to some green timber to bed. And bulls, when they want to start pushing their cows to go to bed, usually they can get real, active and like bugling a bunch. And that's usually when they're trying to round up their cows and push them to bed. And I'm like, I think they're going to come straight up this bottom. I was on top of the ridge, and I just had to like pick my moment to expose myself, because I knew once I exposed myself, there's no cover. And was able to just like wait. I could see antler tips moving, and I could see the cows walking. He's behind him, walking. And then I just like was able to like get a range of a down log where I knew he was going to like go right by, and was able to like get a shot off and shoot him. But it was one of those situations where you just kind of had to be patient, right? Mm-hmm. And not rush in. I don't know if I would have been able to kill him the night before. It would have been a Herculean effort, and all the stars would have had to have aligned, like the wind, not getting spotted by any of the cows, like all those things, right? A younger me would have just like charged right in there and been like, I can make this work. And it probably wouldn't have.
Well, and it's tempting too, though, because you're like, I know he's here right now.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like literally a bull in the hand, right? In a way, but is it the best play? And I've been guilty of, hunting elk with the bow is like my arch nemesis. And I've probably been guilty of being too cautious. But that's more with like moving in process where I've lost. I'm like, I probably shouldn't go.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get into like the red zone with elk. Like, and a lot of people successfully do that. You hear about a lot of people saying like, man, I was close. You can get within 80 to 100 yards of elk relatively easy if you have some experience hunting. It's that last little bit that is really hard to read, and you're making a lot of judgment calls about what to do in that last little bit. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's tough.
And you are taking risks,
of course. Yeah.
I always say, by not wanting to screw things up, I think I've screwed a lot of things up. Sure.
But
it's a balancing act too.
Right. It's a balancing act. And there is a lot of just experience that you just have to mess up a bunch of experiences in order to know what doesn't work. And that's, everything I do is based on just lots of failure, tons of failure. I still fail like all the time, right? But at least I know when I'm making a decision to do something, I'm like, I'm doing this because, whatever X scenario worked out poorly, and I'm going to get aggressive in this situation. Other times I'm more patient. So you're taking calculated risks, but you have to take some risks, mm-hmm. smart ones. But yeah, so it worked out, but it was something that, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have played it the same way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what all those screw ups, get you there to find out what's going to work for you. During those earlier hunts, let's say first week of September, second week of September, what are your tactics there then? Are they similar, or are you calling a little bit more?
Yeah,
during
I'm
that
calling
time?
more during that time. I
Okay.
love calling elk too. I should say, like, caveat to all this is like I like spot and stock hunting, but man, just like having the interaction with an elk, calling in a bull, and they're fired up, and having a bull at 6, 7, 8 yards just screamed in your face is like a pretty intense, fun experience.
Oh yeah.
You're much better off, I think, to have that kind of interaction earlier in the season. And so, yes, I do call more, but it's not like I'm not getting aggressive always. I try and use like the carrot and the stick. So I try and call it like squeak. My first go-to when I'm like in that real up close and personal, like the red zone territory, which is like sub 100 yards, is not bugling. It's cow calling. And I might, it's different every time. You kind of have to try and read the elk to see what they're responding to. And, a bull, there can be bulls that have cows in those first 2 weeks of the month. And if they do, they might not respond to the aggressive call. Like sometimes a big bull might respond really well to some aggressive behavior in that first half of the month because they're like, I'm bigger than you are. I don't care what you sound like. I'm going to come like move you out of here, and they're going to come check you out. Right. But I think, the cow call is underrated. In a lot of like elk hunting scenarios, like if a bull is looking for cows in that first part of the month, and they typically are, especially that like not even first 2 weeks, but let's call it like the first 10 days of the season. There's a lot that can be accomplished with nothing but cow calls. So, but it's not the big sexy bugling, response, bugle back, right? It's not the big sexy interaction people are looking for, but I think it can be a lot more effective. I still do spot and stock hunting. Even early in the year. So if I'm not, let's say I'm hunting an area and it seems like I'm striking out. Let's just say, for example, like I'm aggressive. I'm getting aggressive with elk, and it's not working. Then I'll stop doing that entirely and be like, I'm just going to use quiet techniques. And what that might look like is doing a cow calling sequence and then just raking trees. So no bugling, but I want that bull to know there's another bull here. But but I'm not getting aggressive with that bull. Right. I just want him to make him think like, hey, there's a bull over here. There's a bull raking, right? But I'm not like the biggest, baddest bull in the mountain. So make him feel like he's tougher. He could potentially beat me up, right? So I want him to come check me out. Because when they come in, oftentimes when you see an elk come in, like they're looking around. They don't want to get too close in case you're really big, right? They're looking around like, where is he? And if they look at you, like let's just imagine like a bull comes in, he's just an average raghorn 5-point, but he sounds big bad. And he comes around a corner, sees a giant bull elk, like he's not coming in any closer. Right? So they come in cautious.
Yep. Never mind.
Never mind.
We're good.
We're good. Yeah, I didn't mean it.
Yeah. That was just talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to leave now. But, if a big bull at that point in time, he knows he's big, and so he can come in pretty recklessly and aggressively. But an average size bull, this comes back to like, what do you want to shoot? Let's say a smaller raghorn, they're probably going to come in a lot more cautiously because they know they're not the biggest bull on the mountain. I'm anthropomorphizing here a bit, but like hang with me. And it makes sense though, right? It's like they're not looking for a knife fight. They're just looking to try and breed cows. It's like it's a lot of showmanship, right? It's like, I'm tough, you're tough. But then when you actually get close, it's like, no, I didn't want to fight anyway, bro. Like, I'm good,
Right.
like I got somewhere I got to be right now, whatever, right? There's like this bravado that goes on between elk, but ultimately they're not looking to fight. They do it if they have to, but they're not looking for it. So those smaller bulls though, like they're more apt to come in if they feel like, well, maybe there's a chance this guy is smaller than me. I'm tougher than him. I'm bigger than him. So like, and a smaller bull will just keep his mouth shut. Oftentimes there's a bunch of bugling going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and visualizing that scenario that you're painting too. It's like, yeah, I know there's a bull there. I also know that he has cows if you've been cow calling a little bit. So it's like, maybe I'm bigger than this guy and I know he has what I want.
Exactly. And so that's another thing is we haven't talked about like raking or just like stampeding around. So sometimes it's, you try and imitate a bull rutting cows. I'll give you one more. Can I give you one more example?
Oh, I love it.
So this was last year. Spotted a bull way off in the distance. This one was like 2 miles away. He wasn't even
Nice.
talking. No bugling whatsoever, right?
That is what I was going to ask is like, how does your glassing play into this?
Actually, it's pretty important.
Okay.
Yeah, especially for, sometimes it's really important, depends on the terrain. In like real dense timber country, it's not as important. But I mostly hunt in sort of like mixed. Sometimes it's like I'm glassing a lot, and sometimes I'm not glassing as much. But it's not uncommon for me to like glass a bull or glass some elk, and it might take me like several hours to get over to where they're at. And then you get in, and then you can sort of assess the situation. You can hear what's going on, because sometimes those bugles don't carry as far as you think they would. You have to be pretty tight in order to actually hear them make any noise. But in this particular scenario, spotted a bull, saw he was like a very mature 6-point. And so we, it took us a long time to get over there. We get in tight. He's not calling at all. Try cow calling, nothing.
Could you, when you got in tight, could you still see him?
No, lost him in the timber.
Okay.
But I had a sense that he was going to be around that area, because there was water, there was feed, there was timber. And I was like, I'll bet he's just hanging out in this basin. Like, he's just living up here, bouncing around, like just having a fun romp up there. So, yeah, like elk do, right?
Just living his elk life.
Just living his best life. No social media, no phones, no kids, none of that stuff. Just having a good time. And as we got in, like, there was no bugling. Back that up. He bugled, like, just a locator bugle, just like a beep. And we were probably 200 yards away at that point. And I was like, okay.
Oh, my gosh. You had to have been, like, just so jacked when he did that, though.
Yes. We were like, he's here. And so I'm like, okay, game on. And so I bugled back at him just to see how he'd respond. I was still in a safe distance away from him. So I'm like, he's not going to immediately just turn tail and run. I knew he didn't have cows with him. That's also an important piece of the puzzle. So bugled back. He responds right away. Okay. So I'm like, okay, like he's the king of this little area. And here I am, another elk coming in, and I'm letting him know that I'm there right now. I'm going to get closer, and I'm going to keep talking to him a little bit. Not aggressive bugles, just like light, airy bugles, but no throaty. I'm not getting aggressive at all, right? I'm just like, hey, I'm passing through. I'm here. I'm just passing through. Don't, like, not looking for a fight. But as we got in, he kept bugling. And I would let out a cow call, and he wasn't responding every time, right? So, like, I'm letting him know that, like, there's a bull with cows coming through your zone, okay? We get close, and now we're probably 80 to 100 yards from him, and he bugles, and I fire right back at him, okay? He shuts up, doesn't make any noise. And I was like, interesting. So he's not going anywhere, but in that scenario, I'm like, he's not leaving either. He's trying to assess the situation. So what I did is I just started making just a pile of noise. So I literally took a branch. I started running around, stomping branches, just like knocking stuff over, cow calling, like there was a bull chasing. What I'm trying to do is imitate like a bull chasing cows.
Okay.
And that noise, he fired off so fast with this I hadn't heard him bugle like this yet. Aggressive, throaty, just pissed off bugle. I'm not bugling yet, right? I'm just making cow calls, running around. I'm raking trees, and I'm just making a ruckus. My buddy Josh is in front of me, right? So, like, I'm trying to draw this elk in to check me out. And Josh is in front of me, and he's starting to get fired up. Now he's bugling a lot. He's like throaty, aggressive. I'm like, okay, now's the time where I can get aggressive with this bull, because he doesn't have cows, and I just want him to come check me out. So I fire off one just aggressive bugle at him after making all that noise. And I'm not kidding you, Mark. It was like I had my bow on the ground because my buddy Josh is in front of me. He like, and it's like a bunch of these like thick jack pine, like short pines. He stampedes at me, comes running at me, and I felt like an idiot too because my bow's on the ground. I looked at buddy BK who was filming us, and I was like, oh no, like he's coming to us, and like picked my bow up, like knocked an arrow, and it felt like a total rookie move. And then by the time I looked up, he was like 15 yards just charging through the timber at me. So like a good example of like, you kind of have to like feel out the elk and figure out what's going to work for that elk. And and you can get aggressive when they get aggressive, but I tried to like throughout that whole time with that one bull, like read him, see what was working, see what he was responding to, and then try him and just play the situation and in that situation it was like aggression worked. He came in. I did not shoot that bull, by the way, because like it was too late. It was too late, and I just felt like an idiot. So,
I mean, again, like painting that picture though, it's like, yeah, you're kind of checking in with him, figuring out what his tone is, giving him what you wanted him to think you were. Like, hey, I'm just kind of like a regular old bull passing through with cows. But once you got in fairly tight and he shut up, you kind of gave him the like, yeah, maybe I'm just passing through. Maybe I'm not even that big and I have cows, but now I've got a hot cow.
Yep,
or at least that's what I would think with like the chasing and the running.
Yeah.
And I can see that, and also I think that's what you also described as something that not everybody's going to throw at him all that often. So maybe something new, something a little fresh. It sounds real. And he thinks, oh, wait a minute. Now this maybe bull that's smaller than me really has what I want, which is a hot cow.
Yeah, and we were in his like zone, right? We were in his zone, and what I didn't do was just come in aggressive and hot like every 50 yards. I didn't bugle aggressively at him. 50 yards, bugle aggressively at him. I didn't do that, right? So it was like you play the situation, right? So I didn't call too much because I think that's a thing that I hear and see a lot is just people just like calling their way through the woods. And oftentimes that's like not the right play. It can be, but not always. So like read the situation. I knew that bull didn't have cows. So that was a key piece of information, right? That I could like take into our strategy on that situation. If he had cows, I wouldn't have done any of that. I would have played it very differently. So I would have, in that situation, I probably wouldn't have called at all. I wouldn't have bugled at all, excuse me. I would have tried some cow calling and just sneak tactics. And if it didn't respond to that, I would have just like sat and waited for him to do something, move, call, something.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really big thing that you pointed out is like you didn't just come in guns blazing. Like, yeah, you were doing some bugling, but you weren't just like, ah! Like,
yeah, right.
It was like you kind of waited for him to get ramped up. He kind of gave you the FU one, and then you kind of gave it right back in his bubble, and then here he comes.
And he hung up for a long time. Like he didn't just like bite right away. It took a lot of coaxing, right? And then as soon as he thought that there was a bull chasing cows like in his home, he's like, hold on a second, what's going on here? This is my home. What are you doing in my home? Like chasing women around here? Like that's my job.
Right.
And so he came in storming.
So if he did what? And maybe you just said this, but so let's say he did have cows. What do you think your plan would have been?
Oh, if that was the case, I would have done the same thing. So we approached him on the same, like topographically on the same elevation. And I would have just like kept testing the waters with cow calls. And I probably would have done some sits, cow call sits to see if he would have come in quietly. Cause that can happen quite often. So like, sit down or just not sit down necessarily, but like stay in the same spot for 15, 20 minutes and let out, every 5 minutes, a handful of cow calls and just sit and wait and see if he either bugles, see if he comes in quietly. And if he doesn't, like maybe go another 50 yards and see if you get him to respond. Cause again, like I know generally where he's at. And then if I don't get any response and I'm in an area where I'm like, okay, if I keep walking, like I'm probably going to bump him. I would just back out and just wait.
Okay.
I would back out, grab some food out of my pack to a safe distance where I can like make noise, like I can rifle through my pack and just sit and wait and see what I hear and see what he does. This is the advantage of, like backpack hunting.
Like how far would you back out though? Because I would be thinking, man, I've gotten this close. Like I'm kind of in the red zone right now. At least I feel like I am, or have a good chance of that. If he does get up to go look around or check cows, maybe he does stroll by within bow range, but then again, you're playing with the wind there too.
Yeah, I would still, I don't know. It depends on the topography, but like probably a couple 100 yards at least. Okay. Yeah, just enough to feel like if he makes any noise or or they decide to leave to go whatever, eat some grass or go water, like I'm going to be able to hear him or see him. But yeah, it is tempting, right? You're like, I know I'm close. I'm going to stay here. And it's like, well, if they're not making if he's not coming into your cow calls, and you don't know exactly where he's at, generally where he's at within, like, let's say you got like a 200-yard radius or 300-yard radius or 400-yard radius, like somewhere in here is where I'm pretty sure he's at. I would just back out and wait, because more than likely at some point during that day, if he's been bugling, like he's probably going to bugle at some point again. And if he does, and he just fires off a bugle in the middle of the afternoon, it's like, okay, he's right there. Then I might position myself to come up, like, again, get the wind right, and then come in from above him, and I wouldn't call at that point in time because he hasn't been responsive to my calls, and I would just wait. He calls, and I'll be like, okay, I feel safe to move 75 yards, and then I'm going to sit down and wait some more. And then, like, calls again another, like, 30, 45 minutes, I'm going to move in a little bit more until I can really, like, pinpoint his exact location to make sure I'm not going to screw it up. That makes sense. So, again, it's like a patience game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we kind of started this podcast talking about whitetail hunting, whitetail tactics for elk and patience, and it really seems like a lot of what you're doing is like it's almost like mobile patience. Like it's it's like move, be patient, and every time you're making a move, it's very calculated and with purpose. Like you're always taking a risk, but you're taking like a more calculated risk.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And this is one of the reasons I like backpack hunting with my camp on my back, because let's say like that whole afternoon, let's say that bull had cows, you're there all afternoon and you can't make a play on him. He didn't respond to your cow calls, but you end up seeing him come out in an opening that night with his cows, and you watch him till dark, and he's let's call it 700 yards away. And what I would do in that scenario, if I watch them till dark, I'm like, they're going to be here tomorrow morning. I'm going to camp as close as I can to this spot, or I'm going to come back. I want to be right here at daylight. I'll come back the next day and just see what's going on the next day. Maybe the next day he's fired up, because that happens all the time, right? Where it's like different day, totally different behavior, right? So, and then I'd run it all over again, right? Run that, try and figure out another play to get in on that elk.
How far, like in a scenario like that, how far are you getting away to camp?
Like, yeah, again, like hard to say. It depends on the topography and like, yeah, visuals, but you know, anywhere from like whatever that safe distance is, like I'd go over a ridge to make sure like no matter what the wind does, like it's never going to blow towards the elk, right?
Yeah.
That might mean like going up and over the top of a mountain, camping on the backside. Then coming back the next day. Sometimes it could be, you know, you could stay relatively close within like 700-800 yards, but typically like at least that distance. I'm just like, maybe like I'm overly cautious about it, but you could probably get away with camping closer as long as your wind never shifts towards them. Like they're probably not going to hear you at 500 yards mucking around with your tent and whatnot if there's like timber and whatnot in your way. But like I would pull out a safe distance, whatever that looks like. And then just you can be right back where you want to go the next day.
I mean, I think number one, I think that could lead to success, but also, like, it kind of stinks to lug all your gear around because it is heavy. Yeah. You know, maybe you have a couple days of food in there. You've got your tent, you got your sleeping bag, things like that. So, like, you do have a heavier pack, so that is a burden as you move around. But what also sucks is hiking all the way back to your base camp.
Totally.
And leaving an elk that you know where he's at, potentially to hike back in the dark in the morning. That's a lot of time and energy. So it's like you're kind of burning maybe the same fuel different ways, but it's also, I don't know, it's nice to wake up and kind of be at where you want to be hunting.
I agree. I mean, yeah, it is. Sometimes it's annoying carrying around a full pack all day, every day as you're like hunting elk, but I think strategically it can be advantageous. Not always, but it can be very advantageous, especially if you're trying to play the patient game. Now the X factor is like you could have some other people come in and try and like make a play on that elk. I've had that happen so many times, where like I'm playing the patient game and you have somebody come in like guns ablaze and like blah 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 blah, just like and the elk are gone. You're like, I just spent 2 days like trailing this herd.
You're like, no, we were being patient.
I know, yeah. But that's just the way it goes. You know, you can't do anything about that.
Interesting. Well, speaking of, having your gear with you, backpacking, you guys have some new stuff out this year.
First of all, great segue.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
you're a professional. You teed it up. I was
hoping you'd swing that one out of the park. But no, that was unplanned. Go ahead. Sorry, what was your question?
No, I mean, I think, as I mean, we're so lucky as hunters now. I mean,
It's
the
golden
gear
era.
it is just. I was chatting about this with Austin Atkinson earlier today. We were actually chatting about some sheep related stuff, and just in I think he said like 2010 he started guiding for sheep, and like the gear that he was using then compared to now is just like, dude, it's like astronomically, exponentially like lighter, faster. More waterproof, whatever the things are, like you said, we are in a golden era right now. And I know that you've got some golden era gear that you just came out with or are coming out with. And I wanted to chat about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, just my thought on that is like how soft we've become, you know what I mean? Because we have access. It is so true. When I started backpack hunting, I think my first backpack hunt was 2005. And I didn't know anybody that did it, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have any good gear. I think I was using like an 8-pound tent at the time, which I thought was like the lightest weight. I'm like, I bought it at REI.
It was probably a pretty light tent, honestly.
It probably,
in the grand scheme.
Yeah. Anyways, and I was eating like cans of soup. I was doing all the things. Yeah, dude, I know. But, and in many ways, like, Argali is a function of me wanting lighter weight, more functional gear. Like that is our story as a company. So, on the tent front, we just came out of the line of sleeping bags, our Alpine Sleep System. They're really killer bags. Spent a lot of time, about 2 years, kind of working on the design, development, trying to get those right. They're sweet bags, man. And we can dive into all the details if you want to, but I'll just give people the highlight reel of the sleeping bags. We have a pillow that attaches inside the hood. They're incredibly warm, comfortable, lightweight sleeping bags. And then, we have a whole line of tents. I can't remember the last time we talked, but everything from a tarp to 1-person, 2-person, 4-person, 6-person, 8-person tent. The backpacking shelters, I would say, are anywhere from 6-person down. People will backpack with their 8-person tent. It's a large shelter to backpack with, but it weighs, that 8-person tent, which is a giant tent. It's a 2-pole 8-person tent. It weighs as much as my old backpacking tent when I first started backpacking.
So it is doable.
It is very doable, but by today's standards, it's a lot. I did talk to a sheep guide at a sheep show who I was telling him, I was like, I wouldn't backpack with the 8-person. He looks at me and he's like, why not? And I was like, well, it's just a lot of tent, I don't think I need it. And he's like, oh, that's nothing, 8 pounds, that's nothing. I'd backpack with that for my clients. And I was like, okay. And he had come from, the era of like, maybe like a very heavy tent. And he was like, I can have a huge, shelter. So, but we make a lot of tents. My favorite setup for archery elk is either our Hawaii 1P, which is it's like this big, and it's just a nice run and gun shelter. Yeah,
like you've got an Nalgene on the table. Is it about the size of that?
Yeah, it's about the size of an Nalgene. Actually, a little bit shorter and maybe just a hair rounder, but size of a Nalgene for a 1-person tent. It's crazy light, fast to pitch. And then our 2-person tent with a half insert is just a super comfy 1-person shelter. Mm-hmm. And you're, like 2 1/4 pounds for a 2-person tent, like a nice size 2-person tent. You can have like half the tent for your vestibule. So if you have bad weather, you can have your insert, which is like the mesh netting, the bathtub floor. So our tents is not a shameless plug, but they do work very well for backpack hunting. That's kind of our ethos. And they work really well for the one thing that I'm very proud of us for doing, and this was really intentional with our tent designs. I wanted them to be simple and quick and versatile when it comes to how and pitching. They're all these modified rectangular shapes, so they're all set up the same way, more or less, from across the whole line, which is like you pitch the 4 corners in a rectangular shape, get it as square as you can. You put a trekking pole or a pole in the middle, and then you guy out the rest of the points. So it's super simple and fast. So if you do end up pitching your tent at night, which I do a lot of, unfortunately, there's not a lot of fussing around to figure out how to pitch it.
Well, yeah, and if you have maybe multiple tents for, I'm going on this style of hunt, so I'm taking the big one. I'm going on this style of hunt, so I'm taking the small one. Kind of the order of operations is kind of still the same.
It's the same, yeah. And you and I remember on our Kodiak hunt, we took an extra tent just for gear and food and whatever else, right? And it wasn't
Gear, food. We chilled in it for a while.
Chilled in it. Yeah, oh, that was some gnarly weather. Still one of the most wettest trips I've ever been on.
When Eric and I were coming back from shooting the bucks that we got, and this would have been, I don't care what tent I was in, my fingers were crossed that the tents were still going to be there when we got back.
The wind was so nasty wind.
Gnarly.
And we were on a ridge, which is the worst place you can be in high winds, right?
Yeah.
And it was ripping. And we didn't have, like, you know, you're putting stakes in moss. There's no like solid dirt to drive the stakes into. To be totally candid, I was like, I don't know if these tents are going to fly away or not, but there's a good chance they will, just because you couldn't stake them out. You couldn't tie them down. There was no like trees to tie your tents down to. It's just moss.
They held.
But it wasn't, my point with that is like, it wasn't a burden to bring an extra 4-person tent.
No.
You know, you're 1.8 pounds for a large 4-person shelter. And we each had, you know, you had a 4-person, we had a 4-person, then we had an extra gear tent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like the beauty of like modern day backpacking tents is you can get a lot of space for the weight and the size, right?
Right. I mean, and what a luxury, right?
Oh,
like, let's pack a storage / common area. Like, it's just like, it's hard to even fathom, like you said, when you're looking back, like even just like 15 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can have space inside of a tent. Yeah, it really genuinely is. It's a totally different, we live in an era where it's just a totally different category of gear when you look at the lightweight gear. And it's not like you're giving up much in terms of functionality and strength anymore either. It used to be like if you went super light, you were giving up a lot of durability. Well, technology and fabrics has come a long ways, right? So you can have these crazy strong fabrics in a super light shelter. We're making a Dyneema version of our 2-person and 4-person tents, which is crazy strong, ultralight fabric. It's crazy expensive as well, so it's not for everybody. But I mean, it is amazing what you can do with just the fabrics we have today in ultralight tents.
I mean, yeah, I mean the sil nylon and the Dyneema, which I mean, that Dyneema, it really is like, it's a magical fabric.
It really is.
And it is so lightweight. And I mean, I guess you can do this with the sil too, but I'm always so impressed. It looks and feels so, both of them look and feel so delicate. And you can like when you're staking out your tent, I mean, you can stake out your tent. Like, you can put a lot of, like, the amount of pressure that you can put on it to stake it out is really incredible.
It is, yeah. And I
guess I'm not suggesting somebody like, you know, over torque it or anything, but like if you want to get it taught, like, you can certainly do that.
Oh yeah. One of the most common questions we get from people is like, how does it handle wind? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's a lot of variability in wind speed, but I'm like, I think you will be surprised at how strong a winds, if you stake your tent out properly, how well they will do in really high winds. And I know that because I've used them in high winds, right? We had high winds on Kodiak, sustained high winds, high gusts. We have a lot of sheep guides in Alaska, and I think you can get some insane winds. You can get insane winds anywhere, but I think it's more common in the northern reaches of our country where you just get these really high sustained winds that can just destroy camps.
I mean, you hear, you could destroy. You hear about guys getting blown off mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's a lot of wind.
It's a lot of wind. And I always tell people, like, everything has its limitation. I don't care what it is. Like, nothing is impervious to damage. Like, everything has a breaking point. But you can handle 50-mile-an-hour sustained winds in a single wall shelter like ours, like, pretty casually if you stake it out properly. Like, it's not, and people talk about, like, what does a 50-mile-an-hour wind feel like? There's a lot of subjectivity that goes into us as humans in terms of judging wind speed. It's hard to actually know oftentimes. Like, I'm not carrying like I don't know what device measures wind speed, Mark?
There's
a windometer?
A wind meter.
A wind meter.
There's a lot of different wind meters out there. If you're a long range shooter, you probably have one.
Okay. All right. I don't carry one with me, admittedly, but yeah, like 50-mile-an-hour wind is strong. That is a very, very powerful wind.
I wish I didn't have a wind meter with me when we were hunting, and I probably would not have taken the time to whip it out to see what the wind was doing.
Well,
but I'm still very curious. I guess you could probably actually check a weather report for that day.
Well, you could, but like even then, right? So it's like checking the temperature for that day. It's like the weather report says it's going to be, 20 degrees outside, but you find where you're at, it was like actually like, no, it was like, 13 degrees out, or maybe it was, 27 degrees out. So there's a lot of variability in that. But to be fair to you, when you shot your deer, that storm was so gnarly. I was wondering, I was getting concerned for your safety at some point, because I was like, dude, it is just, it was heavy rain, heavy wind. And I was just like, are those boys going to be okay? Like, I think they're going to be fine. But
the wild thing there too, and now we're kind of sidetracking, but typical Alaska, it was beautiful when we shot those deer.
Sure.
It was sunshine. It was blue skies. Eric killed his deer. I killed the deer I shot like nearly right after, and we're taking pictures, and I looked up and I'm like, hey guys, can we take a picture of my deer? Because if we don't, we're not going to you weren't going to be able to see anything. You could just see this wall of weather moving towards us, and then it hit, and it just was wide open.
It didn't go away. Yeah. You also shot a Magnum, so you wanted to get some good photos of it.
Yeah. It was a nice one.
It was a nice blacktail.
Yeah. Super fortunate. That's, that was, I wasn't looking for a giant. I just, I would have been stoked to shoot a nice buck, whatever. But I got.
I just happened to shoot a giant. Just casually saw around, like, oh yeah, that one will do.
Yeah,
why not? I'll shoot that one.
He was the one that was in front of me.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyways, it is a sidetrack, but it is like true that the technology we have available to us for, especially in like the lightweight hunting category, is really remarkable. And there's just, we are. I'm working on stuff now. And doing R&D on fabrics, and there's stuff that we're testing now that is just, it's crazy the specs you're getting in terms of like the weight and the strength is wild, and I almost don't even believe it half the time. I talk to, let's say, a fabric company, and they're like, here's the weight of the fabric, and you're like, okay, that's paper thin. They're like, yeah, but here's our tear strength data, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I believe that, because it just doesn't seem like it should be that way. And so, I'm skeptical about all of it. So we have to test it. But it's just fascinating what.
That probably means more hunting.
Yeah, I know. I guess I got to go out on a hunting trip and test this thing out. Yeah.
No, that's super cool. For those who might not be familiar with Dyneema, maybe give a quick rundown on that material.
So it's okay, let me nerd out with you in a way that I think is hopefully not going to put everybody to sleep, but most tent fabrics are called a woven fabric. So it's literally, imagine two different woven fibers, some going vertically, some going horizontally, and you weave them in a grid, and then you can make those in a ripstop grid oftentimes, right? So you see a tent, you're like, yes, I see squares in the tent. That's a ripstop grid fabric. There are fibers going this way, and there are fibers going this way. And then you take that fabric, and then you coat it in a waterproof material. So you make the raw material, it's not waterproof out of the gate, and then you put silicone on one side or on both sides, or you put polyurethane on that tent fabric to make it, that woven fabric, to make it waterproof. So 98 or 95 or whatever, some high number of all tent fabrics are a woven fabric out there. Dyneema is totally different. It's a composite material. So the way it's made, it's a totally different material. It's a totally different process for making it. I'm not an expert on Dyneema, exactly how it's made, but it's completely different. So imagine I'm trying to think of imagine melting. This is going to be a really poor analogy for people, but imagine melting really thin layers of plastic, okay? And you get it really wet or liquid, and then you sandwich those together into almost like a film. That's essentially, in my layman's way of understanding what Dyneema is. Somebody from Dyneema might watch this and be like, that's not what Dyneema is. But when you look at them, you can see they're different. Right? You look at Dyneema, and then you look at a woven fabric, and you're like, okay, this one has squares. I can understand there's threads of fabric that are going this way and this way. This one, it just looks like a splatter of different material kind of going every which way. So totally different materials.
It almost looks like and again, it's how plywood looks or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great.
But it's analogy. A translucent.
Yes.
It's all the end product is super uniform, but there, at least to me, doesn't appear to be a rhyme or reason of how
Right.
the fabric is put together.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's intentional. They have their own proprietary technology, so I don't know why they do it the way they do. But yeah, it's a translucent looking fabric that it almost looks like a version of like paper mache or like really thin paper. So when you look at it, you're like, this isn't gonna hold up.
Right.
But it's stronger than steel, which is crazy. And I can't remember the stats on how much stronger than steel is, but it's stronger than steel, and it's incredibly abrasion resistant. The downside of Dyneema is that it doesn't stretch, so that makes it a little bit more finicky in terms of getting the pitch of a tent. Really, the biggest benefit of Dyneema is just the weight savings. There are some downsides to Dyneema, like it's a little bulkier than like a poly or a nylon-based fabric, but it is just straight weight savings because it's lighter than anything out there. There are some competing companies now coming out with alternatives to Dyneema that we're playing around with right now. So I think, again, speaking to the point about technology, like I think there are going to be some interesting new fabrics that may not be as expensive as Dyneema coming out. We're playing around with some of them right now, so I don't know whether or not it will work out as a tent fabric or not, but we'll see. And if it does, it could bring the price barrier down for Dyneema because it is literally like a 3-4x increase in cost. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean you are paying a premium to shave that extra little bit of weight for sure.
Yep, but there's a huge market for it. That's the interesting thing. Like there's a huge demand for it too.
Oh yeah, if you're a weight pansy like I am,
same. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you're trying, but you shave 2 pounds off your pack, your kit. I mean, that's a lot of weight. I think if you haven't packed a lot of weight around in the mountains, you'd be like 2 pounds. Like if you're already carrying 50, what's 52? It's like, man, it is more significant than you might think. Like every little bit, it all adds up, right?
Well, and it's not rocket surgery, and you do end up paying for it. But like, if you can shave that off your shelter, and you shave this off, your knife, and shave this off of that, or you know what? Do I really need 2 pairs of underwear? Maybe not. Like,
yep. And especially so, as a guy who likes to hunt archery elk with my camp on my back, a lot of times. Just like drawing and shooting your bow with the difference between like 50 and 60 pounds when you're like on an incline and you're feeling your backpack like pull you back because you're at full draw or whatever. Like it's a huge difference in terms of just being able to like stay in control of your body and make a good shot versus not because your backpack's kind of like pushing you around a little bit.
That's one thing. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask when you were talking about, I usually hunt with my pack. Are you ideally taking your pack off to shoot, or do you just mostly leave it on because you might be moving again next?
Man, yeah, it really depends. I leave it on a lot of times. I think that elk I shot this year, I had it off because I had time, and it was also like pretty much dead quiet, so I needed to shave every little bit of thing that might make a noise. But yeah, I've shot, I don't know, I'd say like probably equal parts with my bow, like with my pack on and pack off. But usually I don't like taking my back off with archery elk because oftentimes you end up, if you're dogging elk or sneaking on elk, you take your pack off and leave it back there. Elk move away and you're like, instead of following the elk, now you got to go get your pack, then come back and you're like, oh, well, I don't know where they're at now, or maybe they've walked. It's just like extra time and logistics. You're better off just keeping it on most of the time.
Gotcha.
It's my philosophy anyway.
Gotcha. Cool, Brad. Did we miss anything on your, the overview, big
that's
picture,
it.
archery elk tactics?
No, I think that's it. I think it's just like, I think we covered it.
I know they work because, like I said, about every year I get my annual picture of you, which I love. I'm always super stoked. So, man, yeah, we got the tactics and the gear, and now other folks can go head up into the...
What was going to happen is people are going to be like, I know you said don't, put away the calls, but I called in a bull September 28th, came in bugling his brains off. And what I'm going to say to that is like, absolutely, can happen. I have done it late season. But what I will bet my life savings on is that more people will find success if they learn to like call less later in the month. Like bet money on it. I bet you'll have more success like trying to be more patient and call less. You can still do it. It can be done. It will be done this year. I have no doubt. but I would put my money on more people being successful using patience to their advantage.
Awesome. We'll leave on that. So,
Okay.
Brad, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for listening. Man, hopefully you're excited to hit the elk woods this year. I know I am. I think I'm in a good position to draw a tag this year. And we'll see if I can put the calls down.
Let's talk later.
Bye, everybody.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.